I heard the Dalai Lama talking to us in his own loving, compassionate way to say relatively clearly, I think, that love is the basic purpose of all religions, that it is the antidote to conflict, and that it is the basis of peace. And I sat there and I said, are we doing that? As professional religious people, as professional religious institutions, what's our history of that as we claim to live religious lives? And then I remembered two other things. One, a statement by George Eliot, who says, "The beginning of compunction is the beginning of new life." And I thought to myself, religion has the obligation to feel compunction for its own positions in the world. In the monastic tradition, there's a wonderful story about the disciples who say to the Holy One, "Holy One, answer for us the greatest spiritual question of them all. Is there life after death?" And the Holy One answered back, "Oh, my dear friends, the greatest spiritual question of them all is not, is there life after death? The greatest spiritual question of them all is there life before death?" The question for us in the West, certainly the question for all Christian cultures, at a moment when we dare to look at the role of religion, conflict and peace building, is what have we contributed to the history of love as religious people? The proverb says, "If a way to the best there be, it demands a full examination of the worst." We simply cannot go on talking to ourselves about how loving we and our tradition are unless we're willing to examine it. Who here will deny that religion, as we have known it, has often been a source of war? We have absolutized ourselves to the point where we have repressed and excluded others. There's a wonderful story in the gospel that we ought to be talking about oftener, perhaps, as in the Christian tradition. The apostles go to Jesus and they're very upset because they say, "There's somebody downtown doing exactly what we do. Stop him. He doesn't belong to our church. He's not a Methodist, he's not a Presbyterian, and God knows he's not a Catholic. So we've got to get this under control." And Jesus' answer to the apostles is, "Those who are not against us are with us." We've been following the apostolic tradition. Those who aren't with us are against us. And that's the seed of division and war. That's what has and goes on legitimating our right to be instruments of pain rather than instruments of love. Religion in the West has often functioned in the service of the state to justify war in Ireland or with the Soviet Union, or ourselves to have seeded and affirmed and waged war in the wars of religion. as a basis for anti-Semitism, to promote the Crusades that began the dissension and the suspicion that is still in our hearts and that we can't shake, that modeled our relationship with others through an inquisition and based colonization on conversions, not on the model of love and happiness. Religion, remember, is what theologized slavery and segregation and now patriarchy. If we really feel compunction as well as compassion, we must be willing to admit that the history of the religious West is a bloody trail of death and repression in the name of God. The UN tells us that half of all the contemporary conflicts in this world have had a religious dimension. The American Friends Committee tells us that of the 20 major conflicts raging now, over 1/3 of them are still based on religion. Social scientists tell us that sacred values drive behavior far more than the rational actor model, meaning we know you'll do what's good for you, we know you'll be rational. Instead, those things we call sacred outweigh other values, including economic ones, and lead us to deal in extremes. Why? Because religion deals in extremes. In ultimate issues, you find ultimate extremism, and therefore religion itself must make the ultimate, the loving ultimate, rather than the death-dealing ultimate. Our questions are these. How much is ignorance of the other our greatest enemy? Our applause is for Emory University and this good woman and this staff who are calling us to understand one another and quit trying to convert one another like a commie for Christ. Our second major spiritual question, if we really wanted to get something out of our meditation, might be, how much of God have we reduced to personal patronage and a tribal God? And how much have we too concluded that those not with us are against us? These are fundamental questions because they come back to the education part of the Dalai Lama's presentation to us. In what are we educating our children in the West? What are the young learning about religion from us as we make our bombs and drop them on the Middle East and run Guantanamo Bay and torture, kidnap prisoners and build the churches in which we define others as theologically inferior to ourselves? And what can we say of ourselves, meaning to me, as a religious figure of our time, if we never say anything, even alone, about these things, let alone together? Einstein said, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. And then he said, I do not know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but I do know that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. It has never been more important for religious people and religions to be really religious, to teach love, to be compassion, to hold the sacredness of life. We make our religions our God, and we fail to see godliness where religion is other than ours. We make national honor our God, while refugees are roaming the roads by the thousands and the borders are seeping with poor. We make human color and gender the color and gender of God, and we fail to see God in those who come to us in a different shade, in a different shape. But God is no one's pigment, no one's gender, and no one's flag. And those who define our God that way be appraised. We are creating simply a new golden calf in the global desert. Indeed, our greatest spiritual question is not, is there life after death? It is there life before death? And religions themselves must be accountable for the violence that is ours, as well as charitable to those who suffer from it. We in the West are each responsible. That's why we're here today, to teach that love, to be that love, to show that compassion, and to honor the other. Why? Because if the people will lead, eventually the leaders will follow. Thank you, my dear love. Thank you.